Hi everybody, I'm Joey. Well, today I'll be making this gate, so stick around and see how I did it. Okay, so first job was to break down my two pieces of Sapele mahogany, get them roughly dressed down and roughly cut to the right sizes. The bottom rail of the gate has to be about 30mm thick instead of 50, just to allow for the shiplap boards to go over top of it. So I'm just doing that now on the bandsaw, and then I can throw it through the thicknesser and get it down to actual size. And then I could break down the other piece of large stock into the two styles of the gate. And get them all trimmed up to length. Next was to make the big tenons on the timber. I didn't really need to use a marking gauge because I'm going to use my dado stack. But before I cut the tenons on the top rail, I need to mark out the arch, and once I worked out what the hell I was doing, I could actually do that. And then I could start the somewhat convoluted process of getting the dado stack in the sliding panel saw. While this dado stack doesn't leave a perfectly flat tenon face, it's very clean and good enough for me. And besides that, I'm not going to stuff around to try and get another dado stack that works on my saw. I spent a lot of time trying to get this one to work. So with all the shoulders formed on my two rails, I can mark out where the tenons need to go and just confirm that fact, draw out where all my joinery is going to go. And I have a very small benchtop mortiser machine, hollow chisel mortiser, and it works very well in Sapele, softish timber. And so I did that, made a quick job of the largish mortises. Given the size of my mortiser machine, it's not stupendously accurate. It's good at making holes, just not necessarily in the exact right place. So I always undersize my mortises slightly, and then I can either pare back my tenons like this, or a combination of paring back my tenons and slightly widening the mortise with a chisel. I just find it's an easier way for me with the machinery I have to get a nice fit. So I decided to finish cleaning out the curve of the arch completely by hand. Just use the spoke shave and just keeping an eye on it. I'd shave a little and step back and take a look at what needs shaved, and it worked actually pretty quickly. I could have made a jig with the router, but I'd still have to make a template anyway, so this seemed to work, and yeah, looks fine to me. I can then add a groove to take the tongues of the shiplap boards, and this was surprisingly easy, and I didn't really have a fixed size. I just picked the bit I had and then sized the shiplap tenons to fit that. I'm using epoxy for the glue up here. This is the outside gate, and why not? Now something went awry slightly when I was cutting the tenons, so I ended up with like a 1mm gap on one side of the one joint, on one side of one joint. So I just epoxied in a sliver of timber, and next day when it was all dried up I could cut it off, and it's nearly invisible. I made up this packer off camera. This will attach to the concrete block wall, and the hinges will attach to this. So I'm just getting the hinges ready on that as well. With that done, I can start making the shiplap for the panels. I played around a little bit with trying to work out the best way to cut these to fit the shape of the arch, and this is, I think, well, certainly was the easiest way I could come up with. Do them all at once, mark them at once, and can go from there. With the pieces cut, I could then just refine the fit, just using my orbital sander to shape it each one as I go, and I found this a pretty good way to get a good fit. So with all the pieces shaped and clamped in place, I could then route them all at the same time, form a rebate, and at the same time form a tongue on the top edge of those pieces. I'm using a penetrating epoxy for the finish here. Ended up doing 2 coats of this. After a 400 grit sand, I went back again with this. This is the second coat of the epoxy finish. And then again with another 400 grit sand, I could fit all the panels into the gate. Clamp everything in place, and then I could flip it over, and using a very small headed stainless steel screw, I could just add a screw to the center of each board. And with the gate upside down, I just added, squeezed in some super glue into the center of each board, just to try and hold it in place so it won't rattle. This is a pretty tight fit, but there is some room to wiggle. There's a 1.5 mm gap between each board. So the final finish I ended up putting on as teak oil because I just couldn't get a really nice smooth finish with the epoxy, and one coat of the teak oil really brought out the depth, and it looks awesome. So now on site I can add the packer and put the true bolts into the concrete post. And that's it. That's my first real gate build, I think. So hope you all enjoyed, maybe perhaps learned something, or maybe not. Anyway, see you next time, everyone.